Right, fantastic. Let's make a start. There's quite a few of you here, so hello everybody in the chat as well. Thanks for just acknowledging that you can hear me for a start. I presume you can all see my screen as well. I'm hoping so. I'm sure somebody will type in the chat if they can't. So fantastic. Thank you all for joining the introduction to the MEC webinar. My name is Edd Clementson, and I'm the implementation consultant at Titus Learning. So essentially what I do is I establish what our clients want and make it as much of a reality as possible, generally through the Moodle platform. And the idea behind today is that I'm going to give you an introduction into the Moodle Educator Certification Program. And thank you for confirming that you can see my screen as well. That's great. So it will be a fairly short webinar, but we can jump straight in, and then any questions that you've got at the end, I will try my best to answer. So firstly, what is the MEC? Well, MEC stands for Moodle Educator Certification Program, and it offers a variety of modules where educators are asked to demonstrate effectiveness against up to 22 digital competencies using Moodle tools. So somebody that takes the MEC won't necessarily be doing all 22 digital competencies, but that'll become clearer just as we work through a little bit more about what the MEC is and getting an understanding of it and what you actually have to do to pass it as well. So what's the goal of the MEC? Why have Moodle HQ created this? Well, it's to improve the quality of teaching and learning for the end users of Moodle, basically. So it kind of splits into 2 points from Moodle HQ. So the first is educators actually being the focus of the attention, not the features themselves. So just dragging and dropping on a few PDF files onto it could be any learning platform. The idea of the MEC is that it's actually going to get you thinking a lot more deeply about why you're using certain Moodle activities and resources. So you're asked to consider your own best work in the modules, as well as ways you may apply the ideas in your own teaching and learning practice using Moodle. So that will become a little bit clearer as well as we work through this webinar. And point 2, teaching practice is informed by qualitative feedback. So for anyone who's unsure what it's a hard, difficult word to say, what qualitative feedback is, it's just used to gain an understanding of underlying reasons why you might do something, so opinions and motivations. So we try to model specific behaviors like providing exemplars in Moodle, making room for experimentation, encouraging reflection, and requesting feedback from participants. So that's from Moodle HQ themselves. The way that all of these different elements are achieved are through the actual course that you will be a part of. So for each digital competency, which I will explain more about, there'll be a separate course. And in each of these areas, there's places where you can talk with other participants. You can look back on what you've actually submitted and state how you think it might improve your general teaching and learning job, especially if it is very heavily involved with Moodle. So there is quite a lot to it. But one question as well that quite often comes up is who is the MEC for? Well, it is for anybody, but particularly people that already have a good understanding of Moodle and the activities and resources available when you're course building, and anybody that just wishes to demonstrate how proficient they are with Moodle and using the tools. So even myself, sometimes you can just get in a certain habit of going down the easy route sometimes if you're creating courses within Moodle. So you might drag and drop a PDF file on and then leave it there, and that's done for a while. Whereas this will get you thinking a lot more about why you would choose a specific activity or resource and how it's actually going to impact the end learner. So we'll go through a few specific examples of that just so it's a little bit clearer. So initially as well, in order for myself to become an MEC facilitator, I've taken the MEC already. It has changed slightly, but I've got an understanding, especially of the core 6 modules, which we will look at in a little bit more detail. So what is an MEC facilitator? As I said, it's me. At the minute, it's only Moodle partners and certified individuals, facilitators. And our role is just to facilitate your progress through the program itself, through providing instructions, guidance, and support through each module or learning outcome or digital proficiency, depending on what terminology you use. Some people will be able to jump into the MEC and they'll already have a really good understanding from the teaching and learning side of why they would use certain activities and resources. Other people, it may take a little bit longer to actually get to that background thinking. I would probably include myself in that initially as well, especially with some of the areas that really did have to make me think about why I was choosing certain activities and resources. So different people, depending on your background, will get slightly different things out of it. So for example, you could be an administrator, or you could be a teacher, and you might have quite different roles and responsibilities on the platform, but your role within Moodle might cross over. You'll just have a different kind of approach to things. What is also part of my role is to actually grade any submissions. And I'm aware that we've not talked about what's actually submitted yet. So I would grade and provide feedback to ensure that users are at least competent for each digital competency, competent or mastery. So there's a rubric scale that we use that I'll explain towards the end. So how does the MEC actually work? Well, the plan is that there's going to be 3 pathways available. So at the moment, it's only the core certification. I know that there's work being done on the comprehensive certification as well. That's all 22 modules. So on the right-hand side there, you should be able to see the 6 core modules. So universal design, open content, guiding learners, teaching tools, learner collaboration, and assessment strategy. So for each of these 6 modules, there would be a separate Moodle course on the platform that an MEC participant would be part of. And each of these modules would have this specific description for each of the digital competencies. So I will give you a few examples of that. There's additional ones that are going to be in the comprehensive certification. So there's things like looking at community engagement, digital problem solving, individualizing learning. What else have we got? Responsible participation. There's quite a broad spectrum. I won't go through all 22. I could be here a while. So further on from how it actually works, so if we take, let's take an example. So on the previous slide, there was universal design. So the actual learning outcome there is respond to learners' diverse needs and ensure accessibility to learning resources and activities in Moodle. So each of the modules fits within one of these kind of 4 principles, if you will. So design, guide, connect, and reflect. So universal design would fit under design. Another one would be, let's say, learner collaboration. So foster the creation and exchange of knowledge through collaboration and peer interaction. So that would probably, that fits under connect, for example. So each of these 6 modules, or each of these 22 that are just being finalized, each will sit within one of these 4 areas. As I said, certain people will find certain areas easier than others, and it might be specific kind of principles like these so you might, from the design and the guide side, you could probably get through the design challenges quite easily, whereas you might struggle with some of the modules in one particular area, so the reflection ones. In terms of what's actually involved then, so the journey, I've kind of broken this down into 4 areas. So the first one is choose. So you're choosing your pathway. Is it going to be core? Is it going to be comprehensive? Would you be looking at the teacher specialization, which hasn't been finalized yet, before anybody asks about that one? As I say, the core certification is available at the moment. You'd then be looking at the explore side of things. So this is when you're going to be looking at exploring the teaching and learning using Moodle. So each of these modules has its own course. And within there's some information about how that's, essentially relevant to Moodle and teaching and learning. So it's all about understanding how that specific learning outcome for that module can relate to what you're doing in Moodle, like within your day job, and then consequently, how can you actually build this into Moodle using the core Moodle activities and resources within a course. And that kind of takes you on to point 3, so the design and the build. So you'll then look at designing and building learning activities that you submit as design challenges. So for an MEC participant, you'd have an account created on a platform, and you'd be enrolled into each of the relevant module courses. And you'd also get to create your own sandbox area. And this is where you would build your design challenges. And these learning activities that you use, so it could be labels, forums, assignments, quizzes, etc., are going to address these digital competencies that are the modules. And this is kind of where we come in as facilitators. So we will help you understand what you should be kind of looking at in terms of the building element towards that learning outcome. So as I said before, some people can pick it up very, very quickly. Other people, there'll be certain areas that will be a little bit tougher to understand. So that's kind of where we come in, is to guide people in the right direction. And then, as I said, obviously we provide feedback and grade that against the rubric, which I will explain. And finally, kind of step 4 is actually getting certified. So for each module that you complete, so each course, each module, you receive a badge. And then if you complete all of the modules in a certain pathway, so all 6 in the initial course certification, you will receive a certificate to basically say, I am proficient in using well, Moodle technology, Moodle activities and resources. So I've mentioned about submitting learning activities, but I've not actually said what you actually submit. And what you're actually doing is submitting 2 design challenges for every module. So if we took universal design, there would be a specific course for that module. The learning outcome would be clearly listed in there, and there'd also be 2 assignment activities where you would submit 2 different design challenges. So what is a design challenge? Well, in the MEC context, it's a way of addressing a problem by constructing a solution using Moodle activities and resources. So I'll give you an example of one of those in a minute. So the MEC is going to give you the chance to challenge yourself to have those more in-depth thought processes, which I mentioned before. So actually thinking, why am I adding this particular activity and resource, rather than just, oh, here's a forum because I know that it's going to get people working together. It takes you that step further, because before you create the design challenges, you're going to have to know and understand a particular problem that you're trying to solve. So the primary purpose of these is to set the stage for empathy, alongside giving your end learners some direction through the coordination of the different activities and resources that you're going to be adding. But as I say, I will have an example of this. So when you're creating a design challenge, if we refer back to universal design, that seems to be the module that I kind of refer back to all the time. So respond to learners' diverse needs and ensure accessibility to learning resources and activities in Moodle. So when you're creating your design challenges and you're thinking about what Moodle activities and resources you're going to use, this learning outcome or learning objective is going to act as that foundation to what you create. So you can't lose sight of that. So it could be, for example, just going through what I submitted. So it could be a design challenge that focuses on utilizing a forum to collect the outcomes of certain group discussions before like an in-person presentation will be performed within a classroom environment. It could also be, in fact, if I refer back to, one second, that one. So if you do choose to do something like using forums in terms of getting people collaborating and working together and giving people access before the lesson, you could go 2 different approaches to that. You could start looking at the specific activities that could support a forum, or you could start looking at the nitty-gritty settings, so to speak, and the different forum types, and how are these actually going to help people whilst addressing universal design. So depending on which learning outcome you're looking at, certain areas are going to be more useful. For example, assignments and quizzes, I think when I did the course certification, were quite prominently on my mind in terms of suitable things to use, suitable activities and resources to use, rather. When you're creating your design challenge, I've already mentioned that you would get your personal sandbox area within the platform itself. Within here, it's quite important when constructing your design challenges to provide some context as well. So some context to these. So rather than just creating or adding a forum and adding a book that's going to have some information to support that forum, you would actually have to provide some context. because obviously myself as a facilitator, I might interpret things slightly differently. Already kind of mentioned this, but there are five steps involved, I suppose, to creating a design challenge, if you wanted to strip it down. So the first one is obviously identifying your learning objective. So universal design, I'll use that one again. Determine your approach to supporting the MSc module. So thinking about that specific scenario that you could be in, and that kind of leads straight into selecting an appropriate Moodle tool. So you've got your design, you've got your learning outcome. You're then thinking, well, I want to apply it to a rough kind of situation, especially it could be one that you're familiar with. Then you start thinking, well, these tools are going to be particularly useful for that with these settings potentially. And then that's when you would actually build that within your sandbox and add some context in there as well. For anybody that does do the MEC and does do it with myself, I've written a guide on design challenges to kind of point people in the right direction, because different people interpret them quite differently as well. It's something I struggled with initially. And finally, you'd be submitting a link to your topics from your sandbox course to the assignments for each design challenge. And that kind of comes on to the grading and the feedback side of things. So participants are measured against 4 levels of mastery related to each module competency standard. And that's against knowledge and skill. So you'd get a rating from emerging, developing, competent, and mastery against knowledge, and then you get one against skill as well. So knowledge, understanding of what the Moodle tool can do and what it's used for. And then you've got the skill side as well. So the actual application of that Moodle tool for the intended goal. So there is kind of like a two-pronged approach. Obviously, if anyone is rated as emerging or developing, additional work needs to be done. So it would be sent back for rework, basically. And ideally, what we want is we want everybody to be competent or even have a level of mastery as well in there. So people can kind of go above and beyond and achieve that mastery. Even if somebody, and I've had this question before, even if somebody submits their design challenges and they get competent, you can go back if you really want and go for a mastery attempt. If you want to go next level, that's absolutely fine. So let's go through a little bit of a summary, because it has been a bit of a whirlwind tour of the MEC. So who? So Titus Learning, myself, I'm an MEC facilitator, and the point of myself is to guide people through the MEC, help people with design challenges and make sure that I grade them correctly and provide relevant feedback. What is the MEC? Well, it's a teaching and learning focused curriculum of 22 modules over 3 different pathways at the moment. That will change. I would imagine if anything, it will just expand. In terms of when, technically whenever. So we look to build a cohort first, and then we kind of look to schedule certain dates. So there's no kind of pinned down dates at the moment. In terms of where, well, it's all done remotely, because it's not like it's not training or anything like that. Addressing obviously your Moodle proficiency. So training isn't actually involved in that. Why? Well, the purpose is to improve your teaching and learning using Moodle through the Moodle tools. And obviously on the back of that, consequently, is to help your end users get more out of the platform. And how? Well, that's through the creation and submission of 2 design challenges per module. Competent and mastery ratings must be achieved in the rubric to receive a badge. And after you've completed a set number of modules, so we'll take the course, so you've got 6 modules, 6 courses, you will receive a certificate. And the core certification is available now. Perfect. I've actually got through that a lot quicker than expected. So I do hope that it has been useful in terms of giving you an introduction to the MEC and what it is. Does anybody have any questions at the moment that you'd like to ask about the MEC? And I will try my very best to answer them. I'll stare at the chat just to see if anybody has a question. What is the time frame for each module? That isn't really in concrete, to be honest. So in terms of the time frames, some people would be potentially able to literally hammer out design challenges within a day, potentially. Other people might want to take a week to do one design challenge, and they'll plan it like that. So there's no kind of pin down from that. So all that I would take from that is there's no pressure to complete things very quickly if you want to. But if there's no more questions, thank you very much for everybody's time today. I do hope that you have found it useful. If you do think of any other questions, you'll be able to respond to the email that you get from us as well. But aside from that, just enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.